All right. People love saving money, so much so that September is, among other things, known as National Coupon Month. Well, you know where else you can save money? Energy bills. And then Bill Fay is here to talk about his efforts in making that happen for tens of thousands of people. Now, how is that possible? Well, next month, a variety of stakeholders will meet in Las Vegas to update the IECC. Now, these stakeholders recognize the critical role that buildings play in sound energy and climate policy. For instance, the U.S. Conference of Mayors unanimously adopted a resolution on July 1st of this year, encouraging cities to commit their full voting slate to vote for proposals that boost the efficiency of the 2021 IECC by at least 10%. They hope that by tackling the nation's largest source of carbon, that's buildings, things will start cooling down and fast. Now, our guest today is a 4-decade veteran of Washington, D.C. His name is Bill Fay, and he has led 7 broad-based national issue campaigns that coordinate lobbying, media, communications, and grassroots advocacy, both independently and as Senior Vice President for America's largest public relations firm. He has recognized energy expertise, having worked complex energy issues on Capitol Hill relating to fossil fuels, nuclear, hydropower, and electricity generation and transmission. Bill has organized and led the nation's premier coalitions on the 1990 Clean Air Act reauthorization, product liability reform, multi-year highway legislation, and President Bush's Clear Skies Initiative. And he was recently named one of Green Building Media's 2018 Eco Leaders. Now, since 2007, he has led the Energy Efficient Codes Coalition, or EECC, which has united a unique support base from government, environmental groups, business, low-income housing and consumer groups, manufacturers, utilities, and labor to advance the development and adoption of building energy codes that put America on a glide path of dynamic building efficiency gains. EECC has helped boost the residential and commercial building efficiency of the Model Energy Code, that's the IECC, by 38% and 35% respectively, and has worked with local and state jurisdictions to support its adoption. Now, back between 1978 and 1985, Bill served as a legislative director in the U.S. House and Senate, specializing in energy, environment, tax, transportation, and natural resource policy and regulation. He has testified before 11 congressional committees, and he also worked for the Idaho legislature. Now, during the course of his presentation today, you're welcome to submit questions for him. Simply use that questions box that's probably on the right side of your screen. I'm going to review those questions and pose them to Bill during the Q&A time that we've set aside after his presentation. Welcome to the webinar, Bill.
Thanks, Mike. I'm thrilled to do this. You know, when Sarah Gutterman first got in touch with me to talk about this, we were trying to figure out what would be the right kind of a topic to discuss. And I think really the issue is an interesting one because my group was set up because for about 20 years there was no progress in America's Model Energy Code. 1 or 2% every 3 years for just was fairly meager in terms of what was happening. And outside of the IECC, we were seeing this incredible innovation towards energy efficient construction. I mean, we saw, USGBC, we saw green codes that were set up. We saw the Energy Star and the formation of regional energy efficiency alliances all around the country, and a very strong and robust Builders Challenge campaign at DOE and legislation passing Congress and signed bipartisan legislation passing Congress 3 different times that recognized the IECC as America's Model Energy Code. So, but that code was staying flat, and our group was set up, and we brought virtually everyone that is in the efficiency arena together, state energy officers, low-income housing, of course, environmental groups, consumer groups, manufacturers, and others to try to really change that and make sure that all of those technologies that were being developed in the marketplace could find their way into the codes so that builders would know how to do them and so that inspectors would know how to recognize them when they were inspecting homes. And we had tremendous success. I mean, in 2 code cycles, The 2009 and 2012, we boosted the efficiency of the IECC by 38% for residential and 35% for commercial buildings in the United States. And I think that, and then the opponents of efficiency kind of changed the rules on what we had to achieve to get a pro-efficiency improvement. And so for the last two code cycles, the 2015 and the 2018, we've had, again, back to meager, about 1% gains. The only good news, or the real good news that came out of those two code cycles, is that we were able to defeat efforts by efficiency opponents to roll back those savings that we achieved, the historic savings. So let me move on, and we'll go to the next slide and start looking at this. This is just a description of the Energy Efficient Codes Coalition. We're a fairly broad-based group. I mean, when you take a look at us, you know, we represent nearly every facet of the construction and efficiency field, and at the same time, I like to say that a lot of the people that support EECC don't say hello when they pass each other in the halls, but they certainly agree on the issue of energy efficiency. Now, this is kind of the chart that shows what the topic is today, which is how today's decisions and the decisions over the next couple of months actually can drive the transition of the IECC to one that leads us to net zero construction in the United States. And so you'll see on the chart that, well, first thing you'll notice is that the reason it's important, this is the elephant in the room of national energy policy. Our buildings use 40% of energy, 70% of U.S. Electricity, 54% of natural gas, and they also create about 40% of carbon emissions. The impact of what we achieved just by going through the 2012 and those gains that we had there are also noted on by the Department of Energy. $126 billion of energy saved, and 12.82 quads of primary energy savings. So, but as you can see, this is not a really great way to go at this. You know, to have 20 years of nothing, then 40%, then again start back on that business as usual of 1% each time. And so you'll see that really what we're heading for now is to put the International Energy Conservation Code on a glide path to net zero construction by 2050. Now, I don't think that's an unreasonable ask of our builders. You know, when you take a look at the fact that today we're seeing net zero buildings for affordable housing, we're seeing net zero buildings, multifamily and commercial buildings that are net zero, it's very achievable. But the thing is that line needs to start heading down, and that's really what we've been working on all year of this year. So there are a couple of aha moments that I wanted to point out. You know, they turn out to be, you know, it's those things that really transform the IECC, or that are leading to the transformation of the IECC, and I'd like to walk through those four aha moments. Kind of started in the around 2010 when McKinsey and Company did an assessment of all of the things that America could do, all the major things to reduce carbon emissions, and then it put it on a cost continuum or cost graph. And so, and what you can see here is that, you know, if you take a look at those things that are in the green boxes, those are the things that are actually addressed by building energy codes in the IECC, and every one of those is to the left of the left side of the chart, and shows a negative cost, and that means that the energy savings that go back to the building owner are greater than the cost to improve them, and that's one of the great things Mike mentioned a couple of minutes ago. That this is literally a way to put thousands of dollars in the wallets of builders, or of home and commercial building occupants and owners. So that's the first aha moment. energy efficiency is cost effective, and it is the most cost effective means of greenhouse gas emission reductions. Now then, recently, for a group called C40, which is a climate action group, it's an international climate action group, McKinsey's Business Center decided, did an analysis of steps that a city could take that would allow them to meet the climate goals that are set by the Paris Climate Accord. And you can see that they only looked at 4 different things. One of them was decarbonizing the electricity grid. One of them was optimizing energy efficiency in buildings. One of them was enabling next generation mobility. And then lastly, improving waste management. If a city, what the McKinsey's focused acceleration report says is that a city desiring to meet those goals of the Paris Accord carbon goals by 2030, if they did those 4 things, they were likely to get within 90% of those goals if they did that. And obviously the most meaningful step among those, and you'll see it with the amount of savings there, is optimizing efficiency in buildings. So here's McKinsey saying that the most impactful and cost-effective thing that you can do to reach carbon goals is energy efficiency in buildings. So the second aha moment came as the mayor started to really take a look at C40's analysis focus acceleration, and also what they started to think about is that, hey, for about 10 years, the U.S. Conference of Mayors has been leading the charge to try to address climate change on the one hand, and then for about 10 years, the U.S. Conference of Mayors has also been endorsing a stronger building energy code. And in fact, they were very instrumental in those 38 and 35% gains in the 2012 IECC. So they said, okay, we have these 2 silo policies, let's merge them. And so the resolution that they unanimously adopted on June 11th, 2018 at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting started out by saying that mayors have led the U.S. efforts to reduce carbon emissions. Secondly, they've long recognized the importance of building efficiency to sound national energy policy. Therefore, let's resolve that mayors not only recognize the unique opportunity to meet the Paris Accord targets using building energy efficiency, but secondly, we need to start putting America's model energy code on a glide path to net zero buildings by 2050. Now, some people will tell you that's not fast enough, and certainly, and I'm going to discuss that in a little bit as we move on. Then the mayors did something they'd never done before. They actually sent a representative to address the ICC Board of Directors. This was in Richmond, Virginia. It was last September, so September of 2018. And what they said, it was the message from U.S. Conference of Mayors was delivered by it was in Richmond, Virginia, and so it was Mayor Stoney's sustainability director, Alicia Zatkoff. And she started out by telling the board that mayors believe that the U.S. has to commit to eliminating energy waste in buildings, and that the ICC is a dramatic or a dynamic IECC is the best solution to do that. Secondly, she stated that mayors know the myriad benefits of energy efficiency and that they support the legitimacy of public officials who are involved in developing it. One of the things that we hadn't mentioned is that the IECC and all the other 14 I codes that are developed by the International Code Council are developed by votes primarily from local government officials, but also state and national government officials that can vote online. At the end of a code cycle, after all of that code cycle has been completed, they can vote on the proposals to determine what's in that next code update. And so I think that's one of the things that gives the IECC its legitimacy as America's national model energy code, is that every governmental official or every governmental jurisdiction in the United States can join ICC and participate in that voting. So mayors, the legitimacy of that is I think very, very strong. And then she pointed out that after 2 consecutive code cycles with no residential and only modest commercial building efficiency gains, mayors are starting to wonder whether they can depend on the IECC to give them what they need, because the mayors want to go forward. They don't want to stay in this static situation where the code's not getting better. And so she finished up her statement by suggesting that U.S. Conference of Mayors begin a dialogue with ICC to try to explore ways to try to make certain that the IECC really does meet those policy goals that they've identified, both energy and carbon. Following that, and this just happened on July 1st of this year, the U.S. Conference of Mayors once again weighed in on building energy codes, and this built on the resolution that was passed the year prior, but this time they were very specific. They started out by saying that whereas since 2008, mayors have endorsed the goals and policy and efficiency recommendations of the Broad-Based Energy Efficient Codes Coalition, therefore let it be it resolved that mayors realize the urgency of meeting Paris Accord and energy targets, and that USCM encourages its municipal governments to maximize their jurisdiction's online voting with the ICC to improve the 2021 IECC by at least 10%, and that's both residential and commercial, during online voting this November, and to put the 2021 IECC and future IECCs on an efficiency glide path of steady gains to net zero by 2050. Now that's the transformation document. Instead of nothing for 20 years, then 40%, then nothing for a couple of years, they're saying, let's get on a glide path. Let's do this steadily. We're not going to have to have builder shock from getting these huge gains. We're going to get about 5%. We're going to start out with 10%, and we're going to try to get 5% every 3 years, and that would bring us to net zero construction of residential, multifamily, and commercial buildings by 2050. So all the pieces are starting to fall into place, and it's all going to culminate in online voting this November. We have a united efficiency community. We are working together, and I think that we're going to have one set of recommendations as to how, the voting guide or the recommendations that the U.S. Conference of Mayors were mentioning that will guide them to adopting those proposals that boost efficiency in very sound economic and cost-effective ways, and also to vote against those proposals that roll back efficiency. We had a better residential and commercial committee this time. After the proposals are introduced in January, they go through a very intensive, it's well over a week of hearings where the committee members listen to every one of the hundreds and hundreds of proposals that are out there and then make recommendations on them. And we had a better committee this time, both residential and commercial. And then I think that the reason that the mayors got so engaged was really the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, from the report that said that we need to do something by 2030, and that's cited in the mayor's resolution. But it really did deliver that sense of urgency that's out there. And then the last piece to fall into place is that we've had across the nation efforts to communicate the jurisdiction's policy to the building and fire officials. A lot of times that hasn't been done. The first time I spoke to the U.S. Conference of Mayors it was in 2008, and the chairman of the Energy Committee, Mayor Will Wynn of Austin, Texas, looked out over the sea of mayors and said, "How many of you knew that America's model energy code was renewed every 3 years?" And not one mayor raised their hand. And he said, "And how many of you knew, like Bill just told you, that it's your employees, the building officials, building and fire officials, that vote for that to update America's Model Energy Code. And again, no one raised their hand. And he said, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. He said, I didn't know that in Austin either. He said, I think in Austin, the building officials are probably 3 to 4 layers below the mayor's office, and I haven't ever met them. And he said, but I'm going to change that, and I'm going to encourage other mayors to change that, and I'm going to work with Bill and the Energy Efficient Codes Coalition to write a resolution, and that was the very first resolution they ever passed, saying we want to get more engaged. We want to make sure that our policies that are trying to stabilize grids, reduce energy bills, help low-income families afford those bills, and then address carbon emissions are communicated to those people who vote. Okay, so that's where the pieces are really starting to fall into place. And so as what's happened this year, well, the process started in January. And it was January, I think, 4th or something like that, that everyone had to submit their proposals. Now, the most fascinating thing about it is that we have seen proposals now, and of course, it's just like any election. If you don't have good candidates, you probably aren't going to go out and vote. So we had to have candidates, in this case, proposals that really were going to make a difference. And so, if you take a look at EECC's proposals, and these are the ones we just submitted, you look at the carbon emissions part of it, and if they were incorporated into the 2021 IECC, they would result in a 35 million metric ton emission reduction of carbon by 2030, and then nearly 50 million metric tons if EECC supporters' proposals are included. Now, what's great about the proposals this time is not only do we have proposals that together will achieve that 10% goal of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for residential and commercial, but they also turn out to be scalable. Now, what is scalable? Well, scalable is, in the past, what we've done is write a code for that moment. And as Alicia Zakhoff said, what mayors want is in many cases, they want to go faster than the code. They will be happy with the 10% improvement, but some of those jurisdictions want to go to 15 or 20%. And so we've written a number of the package proposals, and I mentioned 2 package proposals. One that gets 5% using a flex points program, and one of them that has just a series of options packages that people could put together. But that flex points proposal is interesting because a city could decide that instead of requiring 5 points or 5% improvement, they could require 8 points or 8% improvement. And that's the beauty of the flex points proposal, is that it's a proposal, and I'm going to say it blatantly, we stole it from the Pacific Northwest, where it's working very well in the state of Washington. I think Oregon is looking at it. I think Vermont just adopted a flex points proposal. It gives builders flexibility after they built a really good envelope. So the first, builders don't get that flexibility only after they put together a very good building envelope, and then they can choose from, in our proposal, 32 different options and the points based have to add up. The points for the options that they choose have to add up to 5 points under our proposal. So what we have now is not only a 10% improvement minimum, but in addition to that, a scalable IECC that's going to let those jurisdictions, it's going to guide them as to how to do better than that amount if that's what they choose. And then lastly, the interesting part about it is that we have 2 appendices that have been offered, and they're net zero appendices. Now, an appendix is not mandatory. And so clearly in this case, what we're seeking is trying to give jurisdictions a net zero appendix that they can set up as a voluntary program that leads them to net zero if they choose to do that. So you can see that you have good candidates this time. There are good people, good proposals to vote for. The second thing is, we found out that ICC announced this at a meeting, at the board meeting in Columbus last year, Columbus, Ohio. But they pointed out that ICC's membership definition allows a jurisdiction to have multiple memberships. Now, we've seen this in a lot of states. In Illinois was the first time I saw this, where a lot of hamlets, small towns in Illinois, had a membership for the hamlet and also a separate membership for the fire department. Well, actually, you can have governmental memberships from any department, agency, or unit that's engaged in the laws, regulations, or rules that affect public health, safety, and welfare. That's the definition. They don't have to work codes specifically, but they have to be involved in public health, safety, and welfare. And so multiple memberships, I think, also have given the opportunity for jurisdictions to kind of compare notes. I know that the city of Boston got together with their the sustainability office got together with their building officials, and they're now going to be voting together, but they have separate memberships, and so they actually have increased their voting clout, but they're going to be working together on those votes. And then lastly, I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, but the other good thing that's happened this year is this really outstanding Code Development Committee results. I think that if you add up the improvements recommended by the Commercial Committee, they're already at about 10%. And if you look at the Residential Energy Committee recommendations, they probably only boost efficiency by about 2 to 3%. And that's because, as I mentioned earlier, the efficiency opponents a few years ago changed, went to ICC and got them to change the rules to make it harder first of all, to give them more seats on the Residential Committee, and secondly, and their directed votes, but also then to make sure that we have to have a 2/3 majority to pass the good proposals. Now, the committee had, if you take a look at the non-NAHB members on the committee and those that are pro-efficiency, we had a lot of 5-2, 4-3 majorities that really aren't going to be reflected that ended up being a bad negative recommendation, but certainly is going to at least be something we're going to raise during the hearings. Now, our voting guide is very simple. We have a very simple yardstick. Basically, we look at the proposal, and if it's a proposal that boosts efficiency, oftentimes there will be several approaches. We don't care whose approach it is. We have no pride of authorship. We oftentimes recommend another group's proposal over ours. But what we do is we find the proposal that does the best job of that particular efficiency improvement using readily available technology. And we do that because we don't think that the code should be driving new technology. It should be, but when technologies are proven and they're well understood out in the marketplace, we want those proposals and those technologies to be put into the code. Now, if the proposal rolls back or trades away efficiency, we urge a flat-out opposition, and that's without exception. We base our recommendations on a set of guiding principles. We have 15 or 12 of them, but basically it's that we support a glide path of steady improvements. We have no pride of authorship. We think that the proposals that improve simplicity, improve the ease of enforcement, that are we want to make sure they're cost effective. We tend to prefer proposals. There are some proposals like insulation proposals that will be with the house or the commercial building for the 100 years that it stands, and so they're permanent. And we think that they should be given a lot of attention because they'll be they'll be performing for that building for 100 years. And of course, you know, we also improve as efficiency improves, so does the comfort of the building, and so we take those considerations in there. No backsliding or rollbacks. No, we prefer trade-ups, not trade-offs. A lot of times there are proposals that say, well, let's build a less efficient building and let's instead put in better equipment, or let's build a less efficient building and let's put solar on top. Our feeling is we should not have trade-offs. They should all be trade-ups. If you want solar, make that an add-on rather than an instead of. We don't support product-specific proposals or industry-specific proposals, and we think that there should be a reasonable number of compliance paths for builders to give them some flexibility. But each one of those compliance paths has to be equivalent to the prescriptive path, which is the one that is kind of the central path for the IECC. Here's where we are in the voting categories. If you're going to see our voting guide at some point in time, it'll be public. We will probably we'll do voting recommendations on the 300 or 400 proposals that are out there. But at the same time, we'll also do a compact voting guide of the top priorities. That may be about 40 proposals. You can probably vote on those in about an hour. You know, but they will fall into 4 categories, and that is the biggest energy savers. I've mentioned our flex points option and the efficiency package options. There's a proposal that strengthens the ERI scores back to the level that they were at in 2015. The second category is the individual improvements. Now, these are the improvements that get to you know, several different, you know, window improvements, you know, attic insulation, wall insulation, floor insulation, those types of issues that are individual. Most of those that we're going to be dealing with on the residential side are going to require 2/3 majorities, but the commercial committee gave favorable recommendations to nearly all of those individual proposals, so we'll be able to get a 10% boost with just a simple majority. Then the third category is these hard to quantify improvements, where you can't really tell what the improvement's going to be, and you don't know right away. So that's testing requirements that make sure the builder, they confirm that the builder did the job right. EV ready is a big issue, and those zero efficiency, zero energy appendices that I mentioned. And then lastly, the last category is going to be the rollback, you know, the trade-off options, and nearly all of those only need a simple majority nearly all of them actually they need a simple majority to defeat, and so we're going to be recommending you know, opposition to those proposals. I mentioned the bottom line earlier. This is the carbon savings that are at stake, and here's what you have to do. This is the crunch time. By the 23rd of September, everybody that is a governmental member, and the governmental member as of the 29th of March, if you're a governmental member, you paid your dues, you're in good standing as of the 29th of March, you are able to, your next task is to register, or what they call validate, register your governmental member voting representatives. They're GMVRs, and each governmental member gets 4, 8, or 12, depending upon their population. If you're 50,000 or smaller, you get 4 votes. If you're 50,000 to 150, you get 8, and if you're over 150, you get 12 for each governmental member that's in your jurisdiction. So we want to maximize those because that really increases your clout, your voting clout, and your voice in the online voting that's going to occur in November. Now, the next issue is one that's interesting. I'd love to see people, our governmental members, send 1 or 2 people to the public comment hearings in Las Vegas. We actually know now that the IECC will come up on beginning October 26th, not the 23rd, and it will run all the way through the end of the public comment hearing in Las Vegas on October 30th. The reason we think it's a great idea to have officials come to that public comment hearing is because they can provide their testimony about what they're doing on efficiency and why they believe these proposals are important, and their votes that are cast by governmental members in Las Vegas are actually then published, and they become kind of a guide for those who aren't in Las Vegas. They set the ballot that's going to be the online ballot that'll come out in November. And so there's a reason why we'd like to see each governmental member send one or two people to Las Vegas to testify and to vote. And then lastly, and this is the finalization of the IECC. This date is not set in stone; it's tentative right now. But November 13th to the 27th, right now ICC is intending to open their 2-week voting window. It's open for 2 weeks, and we will be running webinars and providing our voting guide and other things to to assist you. And I think that's something that I'd really recommend that you. This is actually crunch time. This is whatever happens in that 2-week period becomes the 2021 IECC. So that you can see these milestones that are there. And I'm going to close right now and open up for questions. I did want to just touch on a little bit on this one earlier. No, I think I covered it. The interesting thing is registering your. If you want to register your maximum slate of voting officials by the 23rd, it's going to take you about 10 minutes, no more than that. And in fact, if you go on YouTube and go to this site that we'll provide to everybody later on, the Boston City Council filmed them, did a YouTube video of themselves registering their governmental member voting representatives, and they did it in 4 minutes, but they only named their first one, while they were narrating, what they were doing, and so that's really what I wanted to leave you with. The only other thing that I should mention is that EECC will be publishing a code carbon calculator that we did that earlier, and what it shows right now, what the code carbon calculator shows is what a state or a metropolitan area is going to expect in terms of energy savings, carbon savings, criteria pollutant savings, if they adopt the 2018 code over whatever code that they're using now. And we got to thinking, why don't we do a drop down that says what they'll achieve if they follow our voting guide, and particularly the priority voting guide. And so we are going to be able to have you're going to be able to find out what your city or your metropolitan area or your state are going to be able to achieve if we can win these improvements in energy efficiency. So get back to us if you have questions. You can visit us online. You can send me an email. You can do whatever you need to try to get in touch with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to questions.
All right, Bill. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the content, and I did send out a message via the chat box to the group, but please send in your questions. We will get to those right now. The first one comes in from Ken. Are we going to get a copy of the slides to share and help? I know that the recordings of these webinars are always available, and everyone who has registered will get notification when that recording is posted via Green Builder Media. Bill, are the slides going to be made available in like a PDF form?
I do that, and what I can do is there a way to send them out from your end if I did that?
Oh yeah, Green Builder Media could help with that.
So I'll do that right away. I'll put them together in PDF format, and then we'll make them available. And I may, well, actually, we probably ought to just post them on our website as well. So you can go to energyefficientcodes.org. You can send me an email to ask for it, or you can just you will receive it if since Mike has promised that he will get that in your hands immediately.
And Greenbuilding Media has let me know that they can also generate the PDF and send it out. So post it on your website, great, Bill, to do that. And you've already given the slides to Greenbuilding Media, so those will be included in an email that goes out to all that registered. So you have the recording, you'll have the slides. It'll be great. And Ken is very excited. So you made Ken day there, Bill.
I wanted to make Ken day.
Yeah, that's right. And I wanted to get on to a question. Actually, it's a question I had. Now, I know you started out in your presentation talking about this topic, and you mentioned the U.S. Conference of Mayors. But we had Jim Myers, who you and I both know, and Shauna Mazingo, who you and I both know, earlier in the year. They were on this platform. And I asked them the same question I'm going to ask you now. When do you see the code really getting to net zero? And here's why I ask. They both felt that it was going to get there by the 2030 code. But I'm curious as to your personal opinion.
Net zero by 2030 is going to be very hard. I am all for it. I mean, I really am. And I think that one of the reasons we're going with the scalability of the code so that jurisdictions can go beyond the 10% that's set in the code is that, it used to be said that the code is the floor, and that, that's just the worst home that you can legally build. I think that was used a few times, but because of the implications that are involved in codes in the IECC, and it's actually different than the other 14 I codes in two ways. There are 15 I codes altogether, but the IECC is the only one that pays for itself. And according to DOE, if you're building to the 2012, 15, or 18 code, you are going to recoup the added cost of that home in energy savings in under 2 years. And so this is a really rapid payback, guaranteed payback, and it's something that no other I code can do. It doesn't, the fire code is fantastic because it really literally has saved, countless lives. We don't know how many lives we've saved because we don't know whether fires would have started. But at the same time, the safety codes, that govern how your stairs are built and everything like that to make sure that they're safe. Those codes don't put money in your wallet. They provide their own benefit. The IECC puts money in your wallet. And the second thing is the safety and the fire codes pretty much pertain to the individual building that's being constructed. In contrast to the energy code actually has an impact on whether the grid is stable. It has an impact on how peak loads are how often you end up with straining your energy supply, and causing blackouts and brownouts because the demand is so great in a very hot temperature, very cold temperature. And the reason that's true is because the energy efficient building performs best during that time, during those heat waves and cold snaps. And so to answer your question, I actually think that if we can pull off, if the governmental members of America pull off a big victory in terms of efficiency this November, I think that's going to add to that momentum. And I have to say that Shauna and Jim, who I deeply respect, I hope they're right, and we can do it. Now, honest to God, this is done every day. There isn't a jurisdiction that any of you are living in that are listening to this webinar where you don't have a green builder that's built net zero homes. It's being done every day. It's, Garbett Homes in Utah, for example, has billboards saying you get our home, we'll guarantee your energy bill is $5 a month, no more, or we'll pay the difference. That we have these great innovative builders that are building cost-effective net zero homes, commercial buildings, multifamily, and in all instances, their payback is quick in those terms. So I'm going to say, we know that if we end up with 5% every 3 years, at 10% this time and 5% after that, we'll be at net zero construction by 2050. That was what the mayor set as kind of their glide path. But Shauna and Jim may be absolutely right, because as the IPCC warning is, may drive some of this, but also, we may be looking at this new building stock and seeing really how effective these buildings are, and if they, and I think it might be something that starts to grow.
All right. We have a question that came in from Tom. Tom is wanting to know, why is there not more of a focus on performance rather than prescriptive?
Oh, that's a great question, because and the answer to that's simple. The builders that are more sophisticated, and I mean by more sophisticated, the ones that have dedicated themselves to an efficient, to an energy efficient home. The Vern McCowns from Oklahoma, Ron Jones, who was one of the initial green builders, in the nation, all over the country doing this. They're building the performance path. They're not building to the code. All they have to do then in the performance path is meet or exceed the efficiency level of the prescriptive path, and in most cases they're way beyond it. And so it really kind of comes down to who's doing the building, and a lot of times the most of the builders in America build 4 to 5 homes a year. They usually build the code, and they like the prescriptive path because it's instructional for them. I mean, it tells them what they need to do in order to build that home to meet the code, and also for a building official. I got to tell you, our building officials across the country are overworked, they're underpaid, and the bottom, and they're actually also, I think that the workforce of building officials is aging, and so we need to fill, some of those ranks are not being refilled when retirements come about. But the building official likes to be able to look at a checklist, and that's what a prescriptive path is a checklist, and they can go with that. The way that they inspect a performance building is usually through modeling, and so the builder presents a model that shows that their compliance with the code, and then of course the inspector, who may not know all of the machinations that went into the projection, the model, then has to kind of take it on the word that's equivalent. So all of the really great builders are performance builders, and there's no question about it. And I think that the performance path is really a way that we want to end up down the road. But right now, I'd say most of the homes that I've seen are built to the prescriptive path, and that's something that I think right now most of the building officials kind of like.
All right, I'm going to put out the last call for questions. I do have one. Bill is a friend and colleague of ours that I don't need to name, you know who he is, that once said, "We've achieved just about everything we can out of the envelope." Do you agree with that? And if so, then what's next on the path to net zero?
I don't think we've achieved everything on the envelope, and I was just told recently in Massachusetts, for example, they were going to go to they were finding that if they built to the next coldest climate zone, that they were really getting great performance out of the building. Now that means a tighter, it's a tighter envelope, but it's definitely there. Now that said, I have always felt that if we get to we're nearing the point, and actually I think that's what the flex points proposal kind of points out, is that we're nearing that point where the prescriptive table is reaching, it may be nearing a limit. I mean, one of the things we do with flex points is one of the categories where you can pick options is going to be envelope improvements, but there are other things that could be done that aren't envelope oriented. And so I think we're nearing that point where we should start looking at, what we can make sure we add to the envelope, but at the same time that we're providing those options that are available to builders that can get us to net zero. Because the passive house people will tell you, because that's what a passive house is an envelope house, that they can get to 100%, with just envelope measures, and they do that regularly. And it's very common in Europe, but it's a growing technique in the United States. So the answer is we're not there yet. We can obviously get to a passive home, with envelope improvements, but we don't necessarily want to. And I think as we get closer to 100%, now remember we're now at about 40%, and if this code goes the way we hope it does, we'll be at about 50% minimum, but then we'll start thinking about it. I would suspect that in the 2024, you're going to see a lot more options being thrown out there that are going to make it. I think we're nearing that point where we need to make sure that we allow the builder to find the best way to get to 100%. We weren't there yet, but we're still starting, I think, with the flex points idea to start looking at new ways to do that.
It's interesting you bring up Passive House. Bob is attending the webinar today, and he designs to Passive House standards, and he says they're mandatory zero energy. So that's really interesting that you brought that up.
Well, I think I think what it says that technology and the builder can come to this, but we do need to have anybody will tell you that in the efficiency community, there's the envelope first. Let's get the efficiency first, and then let's focus beyond that. And I think that's one of the reasons we've resisted a lot of the efficiency trade-offs, because it weakens that maxim. So thank you all for letting me prattle on for a full hour.
Well, yeah, I don't see any other questions, so I just want to take the time to thank you, Bill, for joining us. It's been a while since you and I have done a webinar together, and so it was good to get back together again. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care.
And I want to thank our audience for attending and asking great questions today. And, believe it or not, we're going to be back in 5 days for our next webinar. That's right. Tuesday, September 17th, we're going to welcome Eric Scari from Uponor, and he's going to talk about smart leak detection systems. So I hope you'll join us at 2 p.m. Eastern Time for that presentation. Until then, have a great weekend. We'll see you all next week.